¿Qué tal amigos de Destinos Místicos? Nos encontramos en la hermosa ciudad de Praga y desde aquí les traeremos un show lleno de mística, historia y alquimia. Así que no se muevan que esto ya comienza. Hoy nuestro recorrido nos lleva a la República Checa. Ubicado en el corazón de Europa, es un país lleno de historia, castillos majestuosos y paisajes impresionantes. Desde las vastas montañas que bordean su territorio hasta los tranquilos ríos que cruzan sus ciudades, esta nación ha sido testigo de innumerables eventos históricos que han dado forma a su cultura. Pero la República Checa también es hogar de relatos, tradiciones y leyendas que se han transmitido de generación en generación. Y una de las ciudades más fascinantes por sus mitos y misterios es sin duda la mágica Praga. Praga, situada a orillas del río Moldava, deslumbra por su encanto atemporal. Famosa por su castillo, el reloj astronómico y sus torres góticas, es un verdadero tesoro histórico. Pero más allá de su belleza evidente, Praga esconde secretos místicos y leyendas que han perdurado a través de los siglos. Me despierto temprano, lista para comenzar un nuevo día lleno de aventuras. Praga es una ciudad donde cada rincón guarda una historia por descubrir. Para adentrarnos en los secretos místicos de esta ciudad, me encuentro con Hannah, cofundadora de McGee's Ghost Tours. Su empresa, reconocida por ofrecer recorridos únicos por los rincones más enigmáticos de la ciudad, nos invita a descubrir su historia, leyendas, alquimia, fantasmas y misterios que han perdurado a lo largo de los siglos.
We have tour of Prague Castle that is combined with a river cruise. We have a tour that covers Old Town and Jewish Ghetto. And then historical tours is also whole day tour that covers all important sites in Prague. It's a river cruise and a typical Czech cuisine. As far as the theme tours, we do World War II and Operation Anthropoid, and evening tours which are kind of full of mysteries and legends. One of them is Alchemy and Mysteries of the Prague Castle that focuses on the era of Rudolf II, golden era of Bohemia, and covers the location where alchemists used to work, used to practice. And our top and most popular tour is Ghosts and Legends of Old Town that covers the Old Town area, a lot of legends, local folklore.
Uno de los mayores valores de su compañía es la exigente selección de guías. Cada uno pasa por un proceso riguroso que evalúa tanto su conocimiento histórico como su capacidad para narrar con precisión y pasión.
First of all, since the establishment of the company, I observe or I do hiring myself because I would like to choose the right one. And during all these years, I can pick right away or I can find out right away whether this guide has a certain talent and of course the language skills. We teach them our tour, our routes, our stories, because all the script and all the material that we tell people is written in a paper and they have to follow, you know, what we want to, guideline. And of course, during the training, They have to learn it, and at the end they are tested. So they have to be perfect and ready to do a good tour.
Y uno de los guías más destacados de la compañía es Alan, con quien me encuentro hoy para profundizar en los secretos místicos de esta ciudad.
Prague has a very ancient history of mysticism, magic, including alchemy later on. Some of it goes back to the origin myth of the establishment of Prague and the Czech lands. An old legend that says from the beginning of the Bible, when Satan was cast out of the heavens by the archangels, it was a great battle, and at the moment that Satan was cast out, there was some kind of enormous explosion, and the debris, according to the origin myth of the Czech lands, the debris was a semi-precious stone called the Moldavite, which has so far only been found in this part of the world, in and around Prague.
It's a very mystic stone.
Very, very mystic stone. Once again, the origin legend claims that these were the stones that decorated the Holy Grail. So the roots of the affinity for magic and mysticism, both folklore and religious, dates back to the origins of the city.
Pero fue recién que en el siglo XIV, durante el reinado del gran rey Carlos IV, cuando la alquimia y la astrología tomaron un gran impulso. Pero esto fue solo el comienzo de una era en la que Praga se transformó en un imán para grandes pensadores y estudiosos de la ciencia, las artes y lo esotérico.
The biggest push really came in the 16th century under the Habsburg Emperor Rudolf II, who was a great student and aficionado of not just magic, mysticism, alchemy, and astrology, but also the occult.
Okay.
So he created a great atmosphere here, both academic and mystical, where great minds in science, in the arts, but also alchemy, astrology, and the occult started to congregate here in that time.
Precisamente por eso, Praga ofrece innumerables lugares llenos de misticismo y misterio por descubrir. Entre ellos se encuentra el Museo de la Alquimia, una joya del siglo XVI que revela los secretos de los antiguos alquimistas y que permaneció oculto durante más de 300 años. También está el imponente castillo de Praga con el famoso Callejón del Oro, donde alquimistas experimentaban en busca de la piedra filosofal. En el barrio judío encontramos la leyenda del Golem, la mítica criatura creada para proteger la ciudad. Y por supuesto el reloj astronómico de Praga, que no solo marca el tiempo, sino también los ciclos astrológicos, una obra cargada de simbolismo y misterio.
Well, the clock itself is the oldest functioning astronomical tower clock in the world, one of the most detailed that's ever been constructed. It still operates according to its original design, although it's been repaired many times over the centuries. It dates back to the year 1410, along with the tower itself and the conventional clock at the top.
El reloj astronómico de Praga está lleno de simbolismos. El gallo dorado que canta al final de cada hora representa el despertar espiritual y la vigilancia divina. Las figuras de los pecados capitales, como la vanidad con su espejo y la avaricia con su bolsa de oro, junto a la muerte con su campana y linterna, simbolizan el paso inevitable del tiempo y las advertencias morales de la época. Pero más allá de su carga simbólica, es una obra de ingeniería increíblemente precisa.
The clock performs a number of functions, some of which are based on astronomy, some of which are based on astrology. So the main part of the dial has three colors, blue, orange, and black. And each of those colored fields represents the entire sky at different times of day.
Okay.
So full daylight, twilight, around dawn, and around sunset, and nighttime. But you'll see there's a small gold and black ring above the dial, which has the ancient signs of the zodiac,
Yes.
dating all the way back to ancient Greece. And that performs a very, very complicated movement. It moves on the upper part of the dial from right to left in the spring and summer, across the lower part of the dial in the fall and winter, but it also rotates. So the effect of it is to show the constellations corresponding to the signs of the zodiac. It shows them in the correct position in the sky each day of the year.
Wow.
And it shows how the position changes over the course of the day and during the 365 days of the year.
Continuamos desde la mística ciudad de Praga, un lugar lleno de enigmas y misterios que han perdurado a través de los siglos. Esta ciudad, con su atmósfera única, ha sido el escenario de innumerables leyendas que combinan historia, mitología y magia. Praga es un lugar donde lo visible y lo oculto se entrelazan, y sus calles parecen guardar secretos que esperan ser descubiertos.
And now we're walking on a street called Pařížská, Paris Boulevard or Paris Avenue, if you wish, in English. A very, very
Expensive
beautiful, very expensive street. Some people refer to it as the Fifth Avenue or Champs-Élysées of Prague.
Yep. I can see that.
Antes de la creación de la avenida, esta era una zona densamente poblada, con callejones estrechos y edificios en ruinas, donde la comunidad judía había vivido durante siglos en condiciones de segregación.
And now we're approaching the Old New Synagogue, as it's called today. So this is the Old New Synagogue. It is the oldest functioning synagogue remaining in Europe. Older synagogue buildings still exist, but they don't function as synagogues.
Okay.
And this is very closely tied with Rabbi Loew. He was a contemporary of Rudolf II. They were actually friends. And this is very deeply attached to the history of Jewish magic and mysticism here in the city. We have the legend following the story of the Golem that it was Rabbi Loew himself who created the Golem and then hid him away in a secret magical room somewhere within the synagogue itself. On the other side of the synagogue, alongside Pařížská Street, there is a steel-rung ladder that is impossible to reach from the ground and then ends in a brick face on the wall. And the legend says that Rabbi Loew created his secret magical room to hide away the Golem for all time somewhere in that wall. And according to the legend, if anyone can determine correctly how to get onto the ladder and how to get off of the ladder, they will reveal that secret room and recover the Golem.
Wow.
Praga es una ciudad donde las leyendas cobran vida en cada rincón. Sus antiguas calles y monumentos históricos guardan historias llenas de misterio y misticismo que han perdurado por siglos. Uno de estos lugares es el monasterio de Strahov.
This is the Strahov Monastery. It's a very large complex, very old monastery, dates back to the year 1140, founded by the Bohemian king Vladislav II. And the monastery had not just the religious significance, but historically it was very important because it's a very strategic location. We're above the elevation of the castle and on a direct route from the southwest to the castle complex. And in fact, during the 30 Years' War, the Swedish army invaded from this direction and wound up taking control and plundering both the monastery and the castle complex.
Son muchas las leyendas que rodean este monasterio, pero hay una en particular que ha cautivado la imaginación de muchos a lo largo del tiempo.
So when the Swedish army was plundering here, there's a famous legend that one Swedish soldier discovered that there was a crypt that had not yet been disturbed. He crept over to the crypt, he removed the enormous flagstone that was covering it, went inside, and indeed it had not yet been disturbed or plundered. And he noticed that the skeleton in the grave was wearing a beautiful necklace with a gold crucifix, and he decided he would take that first. But the instant he touched the crucifix, that enormous stone flagstone swung shut, trapping him inside the crypt. And centuries later, when monks were performing normal maintenance throughout the monastery, they opened the crypt and they discovered two skeletons inside. One of the old abbot lying in the grave, still wearing the necklace with the cross, and the other with his hand on the cross, lying on the ground, was a second skeleton. Next to it was a Swedish battle helmet.
Wow.
Muy cerca de allí se encuentra otro lugar cargado de misterio y misticismo, el Palacio Czernin. Justo frente a este imponente edificio yace el escenario de una historia inquietante.
So from here, you see on this little plaza, we have a large circle of dark cobblestone and a smaller circle in the middle. And the reason for that is that one of the very first churches ever constructed in Prague stood here, the St. Matthew's Church. But it's connected to one of the most famous stories of religious magic, a kind of a horror story, if you will, that dates all the way back to the 10th century.
La leyenda dice que la princesa Drahomira, madre de San Wenceslao, ordenó el asesinato de su suegra, Santa Lumitla, en medio de luchas de poder y conflictos religiosos. Tras un fallido intento de acabar también con su hijo, un misterioso abismo, conocido como el agujero del infierno, se abrió en la tierra, cerca de la iglesia, llenando de terror a los habitantes.
It was belching smoke and fumes and flames. People who dared to approach it said they heard screaming voices, and for many, many, many years, nobody was able to fill it in, and people were afraid to go there. But finally, in the 17th century, a nobleman named Czernin bought up all this land, and he was successfully able to fill in the hole to hell.
A solo unas cuadras de allí se encuentra el lugar exacto donde alguna vez estuvo el legendario agujero, y aún hoy persiste un mito que rodea este enigmático sitio.
And according to the local legend, this was actually the center of the hole to hell. And you can see there's a cross, but part of the legend says that if you step onto the grass, you must beware, because only a person of good heart, good spirit, can step on the grass and not be swallowed up by the hole to hell. If you are evil, you will meet your end here. You're one of the righteous. Welcome.
Continuamos con Destinos Místicos desde la maravillosa ciudad de Praga y ahora nos dirigimos a uno de los lugares más emblemáticos de la ciudad, el Puente de Carlos.
So this is the world-famous Charles Bridge. Charles himself gave the orders and assisted in the design of the bridge. The groundbreaking was at 5:31 in the morning on the 9th of July in the year 1357.
Esa fecha y horario no fueron casualidad. Todo fue planeado y tenía un simbolismo místico y astrológico.
If you arrange those numbers in order, from 1 through 9, it forms an arch of the single-digit odd numbers. And this was a decision that Charles made in conjunction with his astrologers. They believed that this timing, forming that arch, gave unique strength and durability to the bridge.
Mm-hmm. And you also mentioned that this bridge has a particular connection to the solstice.
Yes, that's correct. So if you look at the top of the old bridge tower here in front of us, you may notice that the central spire is a little bit off-center, skewed to the left, and if you look carefully, you can see that it's twisted about 10 degrees. And that's because it faces directly towards the apse of the St. Vitus Cathedral, and it was designed this way The cathedral was located in such a way so on the day of the summer solstice, the precise location where the sun descends behind the ridge is where the apse of the cathedral was placed. So at the base of the spire is a small window, and the last light of the sun on the day of the summer solstice shines directly through the stained glass on the apse of the cathedral to the tower on this side. So the bridge itself was designed in the early Gothic period, and the arches, the stonework, etc. reflects that. You see the statuary, that's the ornamentation for the bridge, was not part of Charles's original design. He wanted just a single crucifix at one location we're approaching, and that was the only ornamentation for the bridge. The statuary that you see, these are all figures from Christian scripture, Christian history, and they were added by the Habsburg emperors in the 17th and 18th century. The Habsburgs were not so concerned about Charles's sensibilities about the bridge, and they wanted to have a lot of Christian symbols and iconography surrounding them on the bridge itself.
Pero curiosamente, el crucifijo es uno de los símbolos religiosos más enigmáticos y fascinantes del puente, ya que tiene inscripciones de enormes letras doradas en hebreo, lo que añade una capa de misterio a su monumento.
So what you're looking at here is the crucifix. This was the only ornamentation that Charles had intended for the bridge, but you notice there's also an inscription in gold. The inscription itself is in Hebrew lettering, and it's actually the opening line of one of the most important prayers in the Jewish faith. Translating it into English, approximately it says, "Holy, holy, holy is the God of all nations." Now, how this came to be is that during the centuries of the ghetto, there were often special taxes levied on the Jewish community to pay for projects around the city, and that tax was used to put up the inscription, once again with the idea in mind that it would show the supremacy of Christianity. Eventually the inscription was taken down because the effect of putting this inscription up actually infuriated the most religious people in both the Jewish and Christian communities here. But in the 20th century, in keeping with the modern architectural preservation laws, the inscription was returned, not for any religious purpose, but because it is preserving the historical integrity of the site. And that's why you see so much of the architecture around us preserved the way it is because the law says it must preserve the authenticity, the historical accuracy of any of these sites. And at the base of the crucifix, there are 3 panels. Each one tells one chapter of that story: the original lie, the correct historical story, and then why ultimately the inscriptions were returned, even over the objections of religious leaders in the Christian and Jewish communities.
Bueno, Alan, muchísimas gracias por este maravilloso tour. La verdad que lo he disfrutado muchísimo.
And I thank you, or as we say here in Prague, dziękuję moc, which means many, many thanks. And I hope to see you again another time here in Prague.
Bueno, y con ustedes nos vemos la próxima semana, donde seguiremos recorriendo el mundo aquí en Destinos Místicos.